There's an RSA coming on.
Oh, good, good. Okay.
Okay, Mark, you're ready to go.
Okay. The December 14th, 2024 Grove School District Board of Directors meeting is called to order at 5:33 p.m. Roll call of board members present. Mark Everett, present. Kate Grandusky,
Present.
Brad Bafaro,
I'm here.
Valerie Ingram,
Here.
Narce Rodriguez,
Here.
and Miley Vernon.
Here.
Okay, great. Thank you. The school board will hear public comment for unscheduled public appearance received through the designated email address on the board page on the district website to be read by district staff at the appropriate time on the agenda. You may also provide a comment if you are registered for the Zoom meeting. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Introductions of audience and staff. If we could just do a quick check-in here of the staff and audience that we have tonight.
John O'Neill, Assistant Superintendent.
Kevin Areen, Director of Human Resources.
David Warner, Communications.
Eileen Klute, Business.
Kip Young, Technology.
Osvaldo Garcia, Principal, and Neil Armstrong.
Karen
Kimberly
O'Neill,
Shear-
High School Principal.
Kimberly Shear, Director of Student Services.
Hi, I'm Ryan Wells. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Cornelius, here as a guest tonight.
Thank you. Okay, I think that might be everybody. All right. Thank you, everyone. Approval of tonight's agenda. Folks have reviewed that. So is there a motion to approve the agenda for this evening?
I move we approve tonight's agenda as written.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion about that? Any vote? Okay. We'll do a roll call vote. I'm a yes. Kate Grandusky,
Yes.
Val Ingram,
Yes.
Narce Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Brad Bafaro.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Thanks. Correspondence and celebrations. I think what I'd like to do is do the student representative report at the top here. So Miley, if you have a student rep report, now's your time.
Okay, so I'll first go over the past. Esports has actually been doing really well. They're still having more people and more groups come in, but so far for the fall, our Rocket League, which is Team Black, they made the postseason, and I can't see the people on it. But anyway, in the present, we're doing a photo week this week instead of a spirit week. And so Monday was first block attire, and most of you probably don't know what that means, but a lot of kids roll out of bed in the morning with their pajamas on, and so we're having people take pictures of that. And then on Tuesday, we had the pet or sibling picture, which they can take a picture of the pet or sibling. Wednesday was a holiday or winter outfit. Thursday was hobbies picked up during quarantine. And then Friday was our food donation Friday. And they'll be at the high school, I think at 4 Can't remember where at the high school, but they'll be having a food drop-off zone so students can come by and drop off food. And then also with that, we're going to reward some students at the end for participating, and we're not sure yet what we're going to reward them with, but we'll figure something out for that. And then esports for the spring, there's a new program that's going to be very beneficial. The new games are FIFA 21, Maiden 21, NBA 2K, Super Smash Bros. And then they're looking to expand ASB athletics to include the esports and help promote and build it. And then for ASB right now, what we're just doing is we're meeting every 2 weeks, or actually every 1 week now. And basically we're just trying to get everything prepared for next semester. And that's it.
Thank you. So how was the involvement for the Spirit Week for the photos? Was that where there were some pretty good ones there?
Sadly today no one has got any photos, but we've been promoting it a lot. So hopefully, I think, and I haven't talked to the freshmen yet, but I don't know. All the others have not gotten any photos. So.
Okay. So today's the first day. Then.
Yes.
Okay, got it. It's the rest of the week. We'll see how it goes then. Okay. All right. Well, great. Thanks very much, Miley. Thank you. Let's see, correspondence and celebrations, calendar notes, recognition, and the superintendent report, Mr. Parker.
So today I want to talk about just a couple of things as we're getting ready to head into holiday break here. I think everyone is, after our start of the year, I think everybody's anxious to get to break here. Here's a couple of things that we're hearing about. Vaccinations. We're hearing from our colleagues at Washington County Health and from ODE. I've heard in two different conversations now that vaccinations are coming. Specifically, these are vaccinations for staff. I think they've laid, I think the piece is that they can be taken by folks 15 years and older, but really this is pointed at vaccinating educators or staff that are involved in education so that we can get kids back into school. The governor made a move and moved educators, all education staff. It's really meant for anybody involved with our organization so that we can get schools back open. They moved us from second round up into 1B. 1A is basically health professionals. They're expecting that, what I'm hearing is that they're thinking that they're going to be finished vaccinating this 1A group by somewhere around the end of January, which means, and I think we fall somewhere right in the middle of this 1B group, but that should push us into January, February with them starting to try and vaccinate our school districts in the state of Oregon. There's still lots of things to figure out, and I haven't heard yet like how this distribution will happen yet, but I am keeping my ears peeled for this starting, because this makes a big impact on when we may be able to get our schools reopened. So I'll keep you in the loop on kind of where that's going. But this is just today I met with Washington County Health, and I met with ODE last week, and they're both kind of saying the same basic time frame now. The other thing we heard today was infections seem to be leveling out in Washington County. So they're starting to see where we were just exponentially increasing. They are seeing some leveling. They still expect them to be at pretty high levels for the near future, but that was a good indication to start to see some leveling anyway, that we aren't just continuing to increase. Observations. I've had the chance to get out over the last couple of weeks, get out in the classrooms and observe what's kind of happening in our classes across the district. And again, I just want to say how impressed I am at our staff and our students and our parents and how they're overcoming and adapting to these environments. I watched in one lesson last week. It was a 5th grade classroom, and they were learning, going through some reading, and then a little brother came into the room through the door and then began to dance around behind the other student. Mom came in and picked him up under her shoulder and walked him out. And all the while, the student just kind of kept rolling with the literacy lesson that they were doing. So we have kind of extraordinary times, and watching how people are overcoming and adapting in these environments, I think is, again, just very inspiring. So I wanted to just point out the hard work and that's going on right now to kind of make things happen. So it's much appreciated. And those are my two kind of superintendent comments tonight. I have one more comment to make, but I want to make it after we do the consent agenda. So if you can come back to me at that point, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much. On to unscheduled public appearance. The board appreciates community members sharing information during public comments. Public criticism or complaints about school district personnel is not allowed at this time. Are there any comments that have been received? And if so, there will be an opportunity, okay, to provide comments if you're registered in the Zoom meeting. Okay. Thanks,
Yeah,
David.
so we had one emailed in, and then we have one that's been put into the Q&A during the meeting so far. So I'll go ahead and read the first one that was submitted through email from Mary Whitmore. It says, "Thank you for the opportunity to contribute. These are uncertain times for public education as we grapple with different combinations of presenting material, guiding practice, and assessing achievement. Online, real classrooms, hybrid situations, all question marks. Have you communicated with the internet schools such as Connections Academy, K through 5, that have been around for a while? Have you looked at their assessments? We have 6,000 students. Did you consider enrolling all of them in online academies until the virus threat is over? What were the arguments pro and con? What were the financial considerations? Thank you in advance for your response. Wishing you all healthy holidays, Mary Whitmore." Over to the Q&A. This is from Charlotte LeMay. "Students who are not working at grade level have been being disregarded and frankly mistreated in FGSD for far too long. I hope we can work together to change this. Did the board receive my letter? I look forward to hearing someone read my letter if I'm not allowed to." So that's me. "My letter was also submitted via email already." There is also a question regarding the conversation about vaccines. Regarding the vaccine, is that for all staff that work within school buildings?
So yes, on the all staff, but I don't know very much about that yet. All I know is they're coming. I haven't seen what the distribution looks like, or even what the, like, who vaccinates first. And, you know, there's a whole bunch of thinking around. Right now, it's just, we hear that it's coming.
Okay. Okay. I don't know about the letter from Charlotte LeMay. Did we receive?
I didn't receive.
Okay.
I didn't receive an email.
Oh, okay. I got one.
I didn't get one.
So I guess we haven't seen the letter.
Okay.
I didn't receive one as the board secretary to forward to you either.
Okay. So I guess the answer then is that we haven't received it.
Yeah, let me check into this and
Okay.
I'll get back to you. Charlotte sent a letter to me,
Okay.
and to John and to Allison
Okay.
late last week, but let me look in and figure. I don't think that letter said to forward on to the board, but let me find out,
Okay.
and we'll get it forwarded to you.
Okay.
She did say that Narse had responded in the Q&A here.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm looking through my email. I did receive something from Charlotte, and I just responded. Let me see. Yeah, 3 days ago.
Okay.
I did receive. I don't know what I do here in this case, but I did receive an email from Charlotte actually 5 days ago. Read that, and then I responded back and CC'd Dr. Parker. So
Okay.
do I read that email right now, or what do I do here?
Well, I guess for me, I'd like to read it. I'd like to, if somebody could forward it, I'd like to read it and, have a chance to think a little bit about it.
Dave,
So-
do you have a copy of the email?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can get that forwarded on.
Can you just send that to us, Dave?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
that'd be helpful.
Okay.
And I just send it to you too, Mark.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. But either Dave, maybe Dave can send it to all of us, or either Dave or Narce, just so we can get it and look at it.
Yep.
Okay.
It was also sent to Charlotte. It looks here, she sent it to Alice and Samuel and John O'Neill and
Okay.
Dr. Parker.
Okay.
It's not us.
All right. We'll take a look at that, and I don't know. I guess we'll have to respond once we've looked at it, once we've had a chance to look at it, or maybe we, I don't know if it's something that we can make a comment at the next meeting after we've had a chance to read it individually.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, that'd be fine. I mean, I'm just following the email trail here. The one that she sent to John, I, and Alice, and John replied to. But whatever she wants, I mean, we'll get this sent out to you so you can take a look at what she, her point of view on this.
Okay. All right.
Dave, I did not reply to Charlotte.
Okay.
Is that right?
We have other communications going.
Okay, I gotcha.
And
Okay.
I replied because I had assumed that I would have received it, and I pretty much just replied, say, thank you very much for your concern.
Yeah.
I will forward this to.
So we've got a big mess up on communication. So this is what I'm going to do. I'll give Charlotte a call, and then we'll find out exactly what she wants to communicate to the board, and we'll get this all squared away. We're just chasing our tail right now. So, and I know Charlotte's listening, so I'll give you a call tomorrow, Charlotte.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. No other comments? David? Warner?
Nope, that's all I have.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. So the consent agenda is made up of routine non-controversial items to be voted on under one motion. Are there any items within the consent items a board member or the superintendent wishes to discuss separately? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Thanks. Thank you. All right, any discussion before we vote? Okay, hearing none. Narce Rodriguez,
Yes.
Valerie Ingram,
Yes.
Brad Bafero,
Yes.
Kate Grandusky,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. And so that the consent agenda, the motion passes. And David, I think you wanted to make a comment at this time.
Well, two things I wanted to talk about. One is that, Charlotte's putting in the piece that to read the letter. So I think there's a public comment thing later in the meeting. So let me see if we can get straightened out exactly what she wants read, and then we can get it read in this meeting, because we're not trying to hide from anything. I just need to make sure which letter she wants to get read here. Okay. Then the other thing I wanted to say is I wanted to congratulate Osvaldo. Tonight, we have hired Osvaldo to become our coordinator of ELL, migrant, and equity. I want to congratulate him. Osvaldo's journey, he was an ELL student. He was a mathematics teacher, an ELL teacher, an assistant principal, and then a principal. He brings to this position a lot of different experiences. And I'm really excited about having him on board in, I want to say, the 2010s or whatever. We ended up cutting this administrative position. And as you'll see in some data coming up later tonight, it needs bringing this position back to administrator as an administrator position. I think is just super important for us to kind of convey the importance of what's going on in our district. So I'm really excited to be working with them. I think it's going to add something to our district. And with that, I want to just congratulate Osvaldo.
Thank you. Congrats, Osvaldo. Congratulations.
Felicidades, Osvaldo.
Gracias.
Okay. All right, let's see. We're on to presentations. So there's two presentations this evening. The first one is a 2010 bond update from Eileen Clute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight we have our 2010 bond financial update. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. It's in the same format as what we typically see each year. Tonight I'll primarily focus on just the changes from this time last year and an overall summary of where we're at. Overall, we have received $67 million in revenue since the bond was issued. We had an original budget of $65.3 million. So we have $2.2 million in additional revenue over and above the original budget. Reported last year was $2.25 million. And so we're up by $15,000. All of that is interest from what we had received over the last 12 months. As far as expenditures, of the $65 million original budget, we've spent $66.5 million of the total proceeds, and it's about $1.2 million over the original budget. Now that's all those additional proceeds we just talked about in the last slide. Since this time last year, we've spent $134,000 of the remaining bond funds. In that included supporting the batting cage at the Forest Grove High School, the Tomahawk fire panel replacement, and then painting over at Tomahawk. Both of the Tomahawk items were related to the seismic update. The fire panel was required, but not covered under the seismic grant. And then the painting was also needed, but not covered under that grant. So both of those got done. And the whole seismic project is officially completed. So we're excited about getting that done. As far as the balance for the bond with the $67 million in proceeds, $66.5 million spent, we have $1 million balance as of this last week. Looking at the remaining projects that we have or funds reserved for these remaining allocations, what we have is, this is the last 2 years of what was presented to the board, and then this current year's update. We currently have parking lot repairs left of $100,000, NAM's chiller repair of $15,000, and then at the high school, the data closets and tennis courts of $70,000. Overall, we're reserving $185,000 for these three things of the remaining $1 million.
Hey, Eileen.
Yeah.
What are we doing with the tennis courts?
So originally with the tennis courts, it was an allocation to put lighting out there. And the cost to put lighting out there well exceeded the amount that was available for that budget. And so what we did was we took the budget allocation out of the bond funds that was supposed to be for lighting and split it up to resurface the tennis courts. So half of it went to resurface it here a few years ago, and then the other half is remaining to resurface it here in a few more years. So that's just the way that it was the high school chose to utilize those funds, just because there wasn't enough to sufficiently light the tennis courts.
And what are we doing with the parking lot repairs?
The parking lot repairs, we've done some at Tomahawk, we've done NAM's, we've done some at Taylor Way, but the last of it is a allocation set aside for Tom McCall's parking lot. Maintenance was going to do a parking lot assessment and kind of review all of the parking lots to see which was the highest priority. And then we'll look at going out for an RFP this spring.
Thanks.
Hey, Eileen, this is Narce. I have a question. I know that from time to time, one of the questions that's come up, it's about NAM's track field. Did that ever get resolved, or is it continuing to be patched up, or what's going on with that?
So the track over at NAMS has been patched somewhat since the last conversation that we had, and it is on our deferred maintenance list of what needs to be done with the next bond. So it is in that list of needs.
And then I have one more question, I'm asking out of an assumption and not really knowing how this works within the K through 12, but in particular, probably at the high school. I see something, Taylor-Way restrooms. Is K through 12, or at the high school level at least, is there any protocols or expectations of gender neutral bathrooms, or do we have that, or do we not have to do that in public schools?
I think that would be a question for Karen or John. If either one of you had a response.
Move. Good move.
That's a great question. I don't have the answer.
Narcy, that is a great question. And last year we just went through an OCR audit for Title IX, and we had to identify for that audit where our gender neutral restrooms are in each of the buildings. And that was part of the report. Each school does provide these restrooms, and primarily they're located in the main office.
So do we have them or not have them?
We do have them. All students have access to those restrooms.
What about locker rooms?
PE changing, should they so wish.
What about locker rooms?
We do not have separate locker facilities.
Was that a compliance recommendation?
It is a compliance recommendation, and we shared the fact that we were allowing students to utilize the gender neutral or staff restrooms identified at each school, and that was sufficient.
And just one more question. Is there a high need for it, John?
I think there's a growing need. Absolutely. We've, 19 years ago when I came to the high school, that was past practice for us, for any student, and not just gender, but also body conscious students and others. But we're making it more and more known to all students, particularly in these individual cases.
Okay, thank you.
Karen, just refresh my memory. I think it's just the high school. Does the high school have a gender neutral locker room, changing room?
What we do is we basically meet with each kid individually, the counselor, and we come up with a plan. So we identify specific places where if it's changing or using the restroom that the kid is comfortable going. So that can be a different locker room. But basically we just work with each individual kid.
So we don't have a particular bond remaining money that could be used for improving, because it sounds like the Title IX regulations are being met, correct?
That the Title IX, we were compliant with the ODE requirements, but does that mean, Narce, that we can't do a better job? Absolutely. Again, it'll take funding, but I'm sorry, this is over a year old in terms of discussion, but I know Doug Thompson, our athletic director, who also oversees PE, was involved in that discussion, and he did walkthroughs with the ODE staff at the high school, as well as Taylor Way staff doing walkthroughs for calc with our facilities point person extensively.
Thank you, John. I just wanted to make sure that that was what was going on. So, and wanted to see if there was some equity that might be missing with the bond remaining commitments. So thank you. It helps
Absolutely.
me a lot. Thank you.
So after that 185,000, there's 865,000 left in bond availability. In conversations with maintenance and where we're at right now and what we have to look forward to, we have a few questions, out there. We have limited maintenance funds each year to do large projects or failures. So if HVAC or heating and cooling fire systems go out, then we utilize these funds to be able to support that. And this next year, the big things that are on the top of our list of potential risks or our exposure is roof maintenance and needs over at Neil Armstrong and Tom McCall, HVAC needs over at Neil Armstrong, boilers at both Neil Armstrong and district office, and then elevator continued maintenance over at the high school. So these are the things as we start to go into the next year and this winter especially, those are our risk factors that we have that we're trying to figure out where to prioritize the remaining bond funds as we wait for the next bond to start on the remainder of those deferred maintenance needs.
Question? I guess my question would be, in terms of where we are with COVID-19, would the HVAC system upgrade improve air quality in the building? I'm just listening to what the other districts are doing in terms of air quality in those buildings. And they're talking about changing out filters, all those other things. But when you change, is the HVAC something replacing the HVAC or upgrading it?
So with this one, it's not, it's maintaining the HVAC. It's not upgrading it over at Neil Armstrong. We've looked at replacing the filters with new filters, different types of filters, and or just replacing our filters more often as this next year comes. And what are those other things that we can do? Maintenance is currently working on a evaluation of all of our HVAC to see, what each room has and what the capacity is. There's definitely limitations on what our systems can do, and to upgrade the systems as a whole, it's costly. We've been looking at upgrading the filters to a higher quality filter. The problem is that we're coming into is just that the higher quality filters require a lot more air pressure. And so the systems aren't able to handle that much change. And so there's lots of things that we're looking at and kind of trying to problem solve that. We haven't finalized anything or really come to a solution on what that could look like. But we are looking at the HVAC for coming back to school.
Okay, good. The other thing, I know we only change out those filters, I think once a year during the summer. I mean, the question would be, would we increase that in terms of changing those filters, increasing the number of times we change those out?
That's a good question. Currently, we change out those filters twice a year in the summer and then over Christmas break. We're looking at changing them out 3 times a year this year. We did it after this fall, after the wildfires and everything, and then we'll look at doing it a couple more times between now and the end of the school year, just to be able to continue to have those clean filters. So that is one thing that we've already started. Great question, Brad.
Perfect. Thanks, Eileen.
Okay, that is all I have for the bond update. If you have any questions, I'm happy to ask them or get more information for you as you need it.
So is there any time limit on the bond funds, Eileen? I mean,
Since the rest of the funds that we have left is all interest, we don't have a time limit. When you have the bond, you have a certain percentage has to be spent within the first year, first 2 years, 3 years. But since we're kind of riding on that interest that we got, that's what's been able to help support us in these other large projects as they come through.
Okay, all right.
Just to comment, I would say that, looking at this bond over the years, I mean, you guys have both you and I guess Mike before you have managed it so well that we still are. After all that time, we still have money in the bank. So I just want to say that, I mean, you've done a good job managing these funds.
And Mike and Terry and the crew that really kind of did all the heavy lifting of the original bond did amazing. Considering some of the stories that you're hearing now about trying to manage bonds and just the cost of materials and cost of construction right now. So this is a good place to be in.
Okay, thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
The next presentation is the Student Achievement Progress Report, and that is John O'Neill and David Parker presenting. So,
okay,
perfect. I think I'm going to present, and then John's going to get us started on this. So hang on one sec while I get rolling.
So this presentation is designed to share student achievement and attendance data with you this evening, primarily comparing last fall, where students were receiving in-person instruction, to this fall, which, as you all know, we've been pivoted to comprehensive distance learning. This fall, our teachers, students, parents, and staff have pivoted to CDL to mitigate safety concerns during the worldwide pandemic. These are also data points that are shared by principals with their appropriate.
Hey, John.
Sure.
Can I just double check something before? What are people seeing right now?
The first page of the report, along with the second page.
So you're not seeing the notes, you're seeing the first page, correct?
Right.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks, John.
Yeah, no problem. So each school has identified staff to actively monitor student engagement and attendance, and they are actively engaging students, parents, counselors, and staff as needed. And it looks a little different by school and by each level. But we're also engaging students through the MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, as well as through the RTI process. That's the 100% and 20% meetings in the buildings, which we've traditionally done for multiple years. Also, our district has chosen a model that provides live instructional time to our students beyond what is bare minimum required by ODE. In fact, at the middle school and high school level, they are receiving live instruction throughout the entire block. So there is no difference there. And we just like to take a moment and recognize this is really hard work. And as you know, this is a work in progress, and we're sharing best practice to deliver better services for our students and for our kids. Also tonight, we know that there's going to be a lot of numbers presented here, and we will send this to you via email so you can review it, and we can add it to an updated board work session. But these are numbers and data points that we will continue to monitor and adjust. So the first chart shows math performance results. The fall IAP benchmark 3-year historical is here, and it's shown. Here's the grade level, grade 3, 240 points possible, and our students scored 60. And in previous falls, in terms of our benchmark assessment, the same math assessment benchmark last year at grade 3, students scored 51, and the year prior 54. So we're encouraged by that. But again, you can see how many points were earned on average for our students out of the total number of points possible. And you can see that that number changes at the 6th grade going up. There are some significant gains in some levels, grades 3, 5, and 7, and 8, and some more modest. And we can see some minor drops at other grade levels, particularly 4th grade and 6th grade, the fall data. I had the opportunity to observe live lessons in math at Tom McCall today, and they were using the digital tools and Go Math effectively. They were using Zoom to not only provide whole class instruction, but to use formative assessment check-ins with students, and then also assign breakout rooms, and in conjunction with their document cameras to present material beyond just the district adopted digital materials that we receive. So high student engagement and participation, like Dave has already reported earlier today. This next slide provides that same information fall to fall by the percent of students that were below the class average by ethnicity. As you can see, it varies again, grade level, year by year. For instance, grade 3, our Hispanic subgroup, showed an increase in students that were below grade level. The prior year, 57%, this year, 65%. So obviously that's concerning. But in 8th grade, it revealed that our Hispanic subgroup showed a decrease in students scoring below the average level in math. Overall, fairly similar performance to last year in math, as evident by our IAP benchmark assessments. And again, these are the different colored ethnicities represented in these bar graphs, and the two main ones being our Hispanic and Caucasian student populations. The next slide reveals reading performance results, fall EasyCBM benchmark 3-year historical students at high risk. So for instance, this graph illustrates a higher percentage of students at risk in 3rd and 4th grade levels than the prior 2 years, but in 5th and 6th grade is relatively close to prior years. With this being said, I need to note that the EasyCBM on all norm assessments, to get a norming baseline, they update the student norm groups every 5 years approximately. And EasyCBM just updated this year's normative groups for this year. And so nationally, students are scoring a little bit lower in the reading skills in these grade levels. And so what they did is adjusted accordingly. So these numbers are actually representing a little bit higher student reading loss than previous years overall.
John, I have a question.
Sure.
What about the 300 students that are missing? How do you build to the average, the 3 years? So 35 looks good. 35% looks good for 3rd graders, but that's the biggest number of students missing. So how do you take that into consideration?
So help me understand your question. How are they missing?
So the enrollment last year was higher. Sorry for the confusion. And
okay,
so,
no problem. Yeah.
So I'm thinking those kids that may be in poverty, or their parents have lost jobs, or what have you, they're not being represented on 2021. Do you get it?
Yes, or move to online. Absolutely, Kate. And Dave and I, this is what's so challenging. Putting together these numbers and trying to compare them. We met with Brigitte today, and it's very challenging for each one of these to provide schools. The key is providing schools with the data they need to provide and identify individual student needs and address their teacher teams, grade level teams, PLCs, and other support services such as counseling or attendance outreach, et cetera. So you're absolutely right. That's a good point. Thank you for clarifying. So The next graph is EasyCBM reading fall 1920 compared to 2021 data. And we wanted to share this with you. And again, this is the percentage of students in high risk. As you can see, there are more Hispanic students at high risk for grades 3 and 4, with the same number of students at high risk in grade 6, but fewer students at high risk in grade 5, which is very interesting to us. Again, like Kate, you pointed out, you know, these are different cohorts of students, but also it's a different number of students that we are comparing.
Hey, John, it's Brad.
Yeah, Brad.
Okay, my question is, you know what's common is, how do you define high risk? When you look at this group, you, like Kate said, you're missing 300 kids out of the sample, but how are we defining high risk? What is
Great question. Yeah, our district, the EasyCBM has identified a percent of high risk, and ours has been historically higher than what they recommend. And so, for instance, in grade 3, 4, and 5, there's 240 points possible. And historically, we have hit, for instance, this year, 60, 56, and 56. But what that means is, are they on track for meeting grade level expectations by the end of the year? And we have identified, you know, a correlation score to the SBAC, and overlaying the EasyCBM assessment results, fall, winter, and spring, to identify predictability of scoring a level 3 or higher on the SBAC. So your question is right on in terms of the high risk means this is a wake-up call. This is the information that our teachers use in grade level meetings, and they've already held them this fall in their 100% meetings. And for the students that are furthest behind, 20% meetings, to identify not only, you know, content instruction, but also what kind of in-classroom supports can be delivered, as well as outside classroom supports.
Okay, so is this 100% of the kids that are enrolled right now? This is 100% of the kids that are enrolled in our school district right now, minus the 300 kids that are not there.
Yes, and this is,
so in other words, did everyone take this test?
These are the test results that we have for all our students. So we've you know, it's a balancing act. We've followed up, the principals have followed up to make sure that individual students that were absent during the assessments were provided the assessments, but that's been, you know, that's true for every year. But
so Brad,
so this is a different kind of year, though. I mean,
yes,
you're gonna have kids not taking this test, where when you have a classroom that you have everybody sitting there, you're probably going to get at least close to 100% of the people participating, the kids participating, I'm assuming.
So I don't think, the bar, because I know I had to look at this too. What these bar represent is the 100%, the bar is all the kids who are high risk in that grade level. And then it breaks out what the ethnicity of those students who are in high risk. So each one of these bars is 100% of the high risk students. So what you're seeing here, just the kids who on that normed test are falling in the high risk.
The kids
that what you?
Yeah, the kids that are taking the test.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
I guess my point is I'm assuming that there are kids that are not taking the test just for a variety of reasons.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's reflected in the data here coming up in terms of attendance, as well as engagement. What we've said to teachers is we prefer students during CDL to have their screens on. However, we, you know, need to recognize that some students don't necessarily feel comfortable, or they aren't necessarily in their space, or there's multiple siblings or family members, involved in various activities during that time, so they can turn off their camera. But we're also being intentional in terms of checking, using formative assessments, who's engaged and who's not. So I observed Brian Gamble's math class today, and he sent us into breakout rooms, and he joined me and said, hey, you probably just want to stay in the main room. I said, great, I'll go ahead and do that. So I jumped back into the main room, and there was a student there who hadn't jumped to the breakout room. And what was really powerful is Mr. Gamble jumped in and said, hey, called the student by name, I notice your camera is off and you're still in the main classroom. Are you having difficulty jumping into the breakout room? And the student opened up his camera and he said, Mr. Gamble, I'm just completing the Avid notes. I want to get them, make sure that they're right, and I will do that right now. And what was also even more powerful is the instructional assistant also jumped in to that main room to double check, that student was getting to where they needed to be. And that student went ahead and left the main room into the other room. But the reason why I share that anecdotal information is because that's a wake-up call that we've asked teachers to really zone in on. If for whatever reason they are providing multiple formative assessment opportunities and the student isn't participating, we need to go ahead and reach out not only to that student, but to that parent individually, particularly either later on in the day or on Wednesdays where individual outreach time occurs. But we want to provide that connection because they aren't in-person instruction, and you, of course, you get that. So anyway.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you. Again, this is a work in progress. We're trying to, monitor and adjust and improve our practice as we continue. So the next slide is NAM STAR reading for the fall. And last year we started a new reading assessment system for the middle school at the request of middle school teachers and administration. This graph illustrates this fall's STAR reading results that shows the average grade equivalent for all students tested, the average percentile rank, and the average correlation to the SBAC level. Now, this is a new assessment. We used it for many, many years. It used to be part of the accelerated reader program in our reading workshop classes. However, we're using it, it's become a lot more rich data producing assessment, and ODE has recognized it as a progress monitoring assessment. So these are the number of students that assessment this fall, and you can compare that. That's this is really good, Brad, in terms of you can compare that to our current enrollment rates, to see what the number of students there. The average equivalent of STAR test. So that grade level equivalent shows that in reading, there's 5.67, that's fifth grade, 6 month, roughly, on the normed national data. And then in 8th grade, that jumps up, as it should, to 6.22. Now, we're not happy with those outcomes, but that allows us, a big school-wide snapshot of how we're doing. What's challenging is, though, that we don't have the multiple years worth of data with the STAR assessment. And this SBAC correlation, this is, as I shared earlier, SBAC is a total of 5 points. 1 is lowest, 5 is highest, and 3 is meets. 4 and 5 are exceeds. So right now, this fall, that's the projected score for the average 7th and 8th grader on the grade level assessment on SBAC this year. However, I know the board has asked me previously this fall whether ODE will administer the SBAC this spring. So I just spoke with Brigitte Martel. She had an update with ODE this last week, and they are putting the final touches on a waiver to the U.S. Department of Education so that we can, once again, not administer the SBAC statewide. And so they're putting together that waiver for us. But again, this is data and information at the very, very high level, all students. But then we use this information to break down individual language arts classrooms at the middle school to identify student needs. The next slide is our summary of attendance data from our first day of school, September 14th through December 3rd. And this is Cornelius Elementary. They have pre-K, kinder, first, second, third, fourth grade. This is the attendance percent up until December 3rd. This is the number of students that are reflected in that. That's basically the enrollment number for each of those grade levels. And then the average percent attendance at Dilley, Echo Shaw, Fern Hill, Harvey Clark, Joe Gale, and Oak Grove Academy. Also included is Tom McCall, Neil Armstrong, and Forest Grove High School by grade level. So across the bottom is the grand total for each grade level as well. For each school. So that's Cornelius, their average attendance percent is 92.5% out of 382 students enrolled. District-wide, our attendance rate is 92.47% for our 5,595 kids. So this is, again, the high level, 10,000 foot level look in terms of checking in with students. Next slide drills down a little farther. Here's the percentage of average daily attendance this year by student ethnicity compared to our district-wide average. So again, these are our PK through 12th grade attendance percentages for our Asian student population. And these are student and parent identified ethnicities, of course. 91.89% for our Black students, 91.28% district-wide for our Hispanic students. Indian, Native American is 85%. Multiracial is 94.5%. And our Pacific Islander is 93.07%. Caucasian is 94 with a grand total of 92.47. Yeah, Brad.
How do we define attendance? I mean, what is
right? Yeah, and ODE defines it for us, and that is students logging on, accessing their live instruction synchronously or asynchronously, and our Canvas system tracks that information. Now, I'm sorry, what, Brad?
For how long do they have to log on?
There is no time limit. And the challenge that other districts are facing, and we are in some instances, is back to that formative assessments. Students log on, they turn off their camera, and that's why it's so important for the formative assessments to be intentionally implemented. So like, for instance, okay, everybody put in the chat, a response to this, or we use Zoom student polls. And I saw that again in multiple classrooms today, in math classrooms at Tom McCall, where students were given a multiple choice Bell work math problem, and then students responded using additional digital software, and the teacher then shared the class what the results were, and then identified where the misconceptions were for those students that missed the questions overall. But again, you just can't have it at the beginning of the class period. You need it throughout the period, because just because a student's name is there doesn't mean that they're actively engaged, but that is the definition for ODE. Now,
so that's why I asked the question. Are we using the formative assessments? What's our criteria for attendance and participating? And what is our F rate at our middle school and high school right now,
right,
to show us what we're doing in terms of attendance?
Absolutely. Thank you for the lead in, and we're going to go there. Next in terms of data. I'm sorry, Mark.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So if this year it's an incredibly unique year, but if this year a student logs on during a school day for is it period by period, John? Is that
it varies for the elementary and middle school.
Okay.
The elementary, and we got clarification in writing from ODE about grade 5 and 6, because they differentiate between K5 and 6-12 in their guidance. But we were like, hey, it's too difficult for us, and Synergy does not allow for us to have two separate systems. Either we're doing attendance every single day, every single period, like the middle school or high school, or we're taking it once a day. And so what we're doing is we opted for the once a day, but I'll go ahead. I'm going to cue Karen, for instance, because we're meeting the bare minimum for ODE. However, we're also differentiating beyond that in our attendance techniques and practices. So Karen, not to put you on the spot, I'm going to put you on the spot in terms of what does that look like at the high school? What are the various attendance marks that you award students? And how is that used to key in the support systems to follow up?
So what we do, so that we have had some instances where kids will be there at the very beginning, and then as teachers use formative assessments, they might not respond, right? So their screen is there, their name is there, but they're not. And so in those cases, if a kid disappears, we mark them as asynchronous, knowing that they still have the opportunity to go online, review the video, do the work, and submit it, and it would still count. But it's communicating to the parent and to us that the kid really wasn't there, right? So we felt it really important to distinguish between kids that are actively engaged and participating while they're in class and those that aren't. And we understand that there's a ton of reasons why they aren't or why they might not be. And so we want to give a lot of grace there, but we also want really good data. And so our attendance team at the high schools, amazing. Juan and Dwight have put together a spreadsheet that just has every detail you can imagine as far as attendance. And those kids that show a pattern of not attending, disengaging, then we're doing home visits. And so they have a team that are going out every Tuesday and Thursday and visiting families to see how we can help them connect. Again, gathering as clean of data as we possibly can, using those formative assessments to make sure that kids are actually engaged. And again, like John said earlier, their camera might be off, but at least the classrooms that I've been into so far, those kids will respond via the chat that they are there. It's for, internet issues or whatever that they can't have their camera on, as we all experience at times, right? So was that enough?
Hey, Karen, Brad. So I would be curious to know what the failing, that we always looked at that failing rate as we moved into that, exactly where we are right now in the school year.
Yep.
You know what that number is?
We have it.
I think it's in the next slide.
Yeah. So let me just clarify real quick for the board. In our model, like we said, we have a very robust model, particularly at our middle school and high school level. We do live instruction following the traditional bell schedule for the entire block. So on grades 6 through 8, ODE, their requirements are 15 to 30 minutes per block for a total of 90 to 180 minutes a day. We go well beyond that. Like at the elementary school, our district continues to provide continues to provide music and PE, where other districts have opted to not provide them this year and have reassigned those teachers to bring down class sizes in elementary to a regular classroom. But for the high school, the ODE minute requirements is 20 to 45 minutes, or double that for live instruction, and for a total of 120 to 270 minutes. So I think a lot of it is, will not only provide the direct instruction, but also the opportunity for individual assistance, the collaborative discussions among students in breakout rooms, etc. But Osvaldo, in just a nutshell, I believe the middle school is very similar to the high school in terms of attendance. Track.
Yeah, very similar. I mean, the staff at Neil Armstrong is working really, really hard. Every teacher is going above and beyond defining attendance as engagement. Obviously, there is a number, there are many students who also hide behind the, camera being off, but teachers are constantly looking for ways to engage the students and making sure that they are there, that they are participating, and they are, answering questions. And obviously through the attendance team, we are targeting those kids who are not coming to school or attending school. We, like you said, John, most of the instruction is synchronously, takes place synchronously. We only have one day a week, which is asynchronous, and it is on Wednesdays. And even on those days, we have instructional assistants providing direct instruction to a group of students who are in need. And they are not necessarily, students, with the special needs, but other students as well who need the support. So yeah, that would be, one more detail that I could add is that we are currently having a similar conversation to what Karen shared, and we are analyzing the data of who are those students who are not actually getting engaged, and we are about to use a feature in Synergy, which is called the MP, to actually create a category to be able to track students who are attending but are not participating, because we want to know when that happens. I mean, there are some anecdotes that, it is happening mostly during the 5th period of the day, and maybe a little bit before lunchtime. So we're trying to figure out when that happens so that we can have some interventions. And that could mean changing a little bit the schedule to accommodate that, or finding other ways around to target those students who are present but not really getting engaged.
Thank you, Osvaldo. Brad, here's the next slide. And this is what you were asking for. This is 7th grade last year, 426 students, compared to this year, 448 students in 7th grade. We actually have more students that received grades at the progress report Fs than we did the prior year. Remember, these are different cohorts. But you can see that this is very different the prior years, because there were 7 classes, 7 grades issued, compared to 5 grades issued this year. So we spent a lot of time trying to disaggregate and, okay, so how do we make this representative, and comparable between the 2 years? So you can see the percentage of Fs has increased slightly over last year, but the percentage of Fs have increased this year for 8th graders. Also represented by this graph is the number of Fs received by color coding. Red represents 1 F, gray represents 2 Fs, orange represents 3 Fs, dark blue represents 4 Fs, and 5 Fs are represented by green. We're going to dive even further into this by subgroup here in just a moment. But, you know, these are absolutely numbers, particularly, you know, the students with 5, 4, 3, 2 Fs, that we're having those PLC conversations at Neil Armstrong in conjunction with counseling services, attendance services, and the student engagement teams. Now, we know we're throwing you a lot of numbers, so we'll go ahead and email this to you so you have it for a reference. And again, we can bring this back to you in a work session. I think it might be really good to take a look at the elementary grading and attendance, because that hasn't stopped yet. We're going to go ahead and end. Grades are due December 16th for mailing at the elementary level, but this is the traditional A through F grades. So what does that mean by content area, Dave?
John, you don't have the high school? You don't have the high school?
They're coming. They're coming. Dave, would you do the next slide?
John, may I share a little bit? I just kind of wanted to say that was first report, but we have anecdotes from all my staff that those numbers are way better right now.
Yes.
So we are really hopeful when the next grade report comes out, because our teachers have been targeting those areas since the very beginning, since that report came out. That was the first progress report. The numbers are significantly better now.
Yes, and thank you for that clarification. And again, we're looking at the number of Fs on the progress report by content area. And you can see that there's some differences there. In our district, historically, math is very challenging. Students receiving passing grades, as well as language arts, when you compare it to science, social studies, and then the lower number of Fs traditionally forever at Forest Grove High School are the elective classes that students choose. So, but we wanted to share that data with you as well. The next graph is...
I have a question. Why is the number so high for math? 337 students.
Right.
That seems unusually high.
I'll let Oz identify that and respond to the, you know, how it compares to previous years. Again, this is an example of how we could really go down a rabbit hole in terms of, okay, so let's look at this now by prior years, 2 prior years. And there's Brigitta and myself doing these with Dave's input. And then also we share this information with principals to get their feedback. And what's really powerful is that the discussions that come out. But I think that's very representative, Kate. You bring out a great point in terms of when we are looking at our IAP data and our STAR reading data. The STAR reading data is very straightforward. It identifies, you know, grade level equivalency, and our job, and that this relates to a question that a community member has asked. Our job by law, we must provide access to a guaranteed and viable grade level curriculum to all students. That being said, through our multi-tiered systems of support, we also are required to provide differentiated instruction for interventions at the elementary school. And then that also carries over to the upper elementary school and middle school. So Kate, this is where that double dose, the double blocking, remember SSA, we came to the board asking for Alex support software, and all students this year, because we're in CDL, have access to Alex in terms of math to work on their individual skill level in addition to their on grade level math curriculum that they receive. But Osvaldo, did you want to comment?
Yeah, just a little bit that historically in the last few years since we have been in the proficiency system, it is the data gets disproportionately represented in the negative side at the very beginning of the year, because students need to be passing all standards to be able to pass the class at that moment. They need to be passing all proficiencies taken at that moment. So they haven't really typically engaged in that process of reteaching, retaking, so at the very beginning of the year, for the last few years, as far as I've been connected to this process, there is really an overwhelming number of students, failing classes. And then that number starts going down exponentially as those students start talking to the teachers, start getting additional instruction, they start retaking those assessments until they get proficient at them.
So just like Mike Schofield and Eileen Klute say, we know these numbers are wrong, but this was a snapshot at the time of proficiency. Does that make sense? In terms of progress reports. Now, the next slide, thank you, Osvaldo, and Kate, thanks for the question. The next slide is very interesting. This is where it gets phenomenally tricky because, as you know, this is progress report 1, everything that Oz just identified in terms of notices to students that they're and parents that they're in danger of failing. They have some proficiencies that they need to relearn and retake in order to get a passing grade and receive credit for the class. And this is a very different year. This year, we have 4 classes being taken a semester. Now, we have 4 quarters, but they're really semesters. They're full-blown semesters taught in an accelerated format, but half of their classes. The discussion at the high school was, do we really want to overwhelm our students or with 8 classes to maintain? Or are we going to set them up for success if we redo the grading periods and focus on half the number of classes? In both formats, they're going to receive 8 credits. But the first bar graph here for grade 9 are actual semester grades. So 324 freshmen of our freshman class had no Fs at the end of first quarter. Remember, this is a semester on the high school transcript. 66 students received 1 F, 46 students received 2 Fs, 3 students received, 4 Fs, 20 students received 4 Fs. And then you can see 5. And I know I just said this is again where it becomes very tricky. Wait a minute, John, you just said that we're only offering 4 classes at the high school. We are, but we also have credit recovery going on, which we award credit as well at the rate of the student. We also have the some options beyond just the 4 classes for those students that are enrolled in accelerated classes like dual college credit opportunities. So the overwhelming majority of our students take 4 classes, but that's where those 13 students had 5 Fs, etc. So you can see this is 9th grade. Here's the number of students for progress report 1. Here's the grade. Here's 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. And so what's important again to call out is every 4 weeks is a progress report at the high school. So the biggest challenge right now is we're moving at a brisk pace. The saving grace for us is that we're in a proficiency-based system where, yes, these Fs are there, but we'll see in another slide from data that Brian Burke provided, that's a snapshot. Those numbers of Fs and incompletes are reduced since this time. We work on that all year long through our systems of support. Brad, did you have a question?
No, I'm just, the comparative sample from year to year is interesting. And I think that just to acknowledge that it is a lot harder the way we're going about things right now, and that there are going to be more Fs.
Yes.
And to try to sugarcoat that is just, is not the right thing to do. Just saying that there are more Fs right now. We have a lot more work to do. I know we have credit recovery. We always have. It's a little harder probably online than it is in person, where you can manage it. But it is something that is a reality that it is what it is right now. That's just
Yes.
a comment.
Yes. Kate?
Well, I'm looking at this and maybe I'm not reading it correctly, but let's take ninth grade. So there's more ninth graders without Fs in 2021 than in 2019, correct?
Yes, but Kate, again, like Oz pointed out, we're comparing to this last year's progress report compared to this year's semester grade. So kids take the semester grade much more seriously, particularly at the high school, because they have to amass credits and they're going for an overall GPA on their transcript for college admissions or trade school admissions, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But I'm just looking at the numbers, and maybe you want to do.
Kate, it's apples to oranges. Those numbers are apples to oranges compared to where we were last year and what they're using this year.
Well, I'm just wondering if you just did 4 classes and as a semester instead of 8 classes, would that be better for the students?
And that's a discussion absolutely that we're, having. I've asked Karen and her admin team that question as well. And the response, I'll let Karen respond, but what we're also hearing from students is, wow, this is a fast pace. I don't have half the year. But Karen?
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge, is just the level of rigor and the pace. And so it'll be really interesting when we get to spring. This has a huge impact on our dual credit and our AP classes. And so what we're going to find, Kate, is kids that are in AP classes, it's Q1 and Q2. They won't actually take the test till Q4. So there's just some impact there. The other challenge is some of our special pops, and then also intervention classes. Because we're on quarters, we're not able to spread those intervention classes throughout the year. It's like 2 quarters and then nothing. So it's just really trying to balance that out in how we provide, the interventions that are necessary, the support for kids. ELD tutorials are challenging. Some of the special ed classes are challenging when you only have 4 classes during a quarter to be able to provide those supports. So there's just a lot to look at. In some ways, yeah, focusing on 4 classes is great, but then the condensed time is sometimes problematic. So we're taking a look at it, but there's definitely pros and cons to both.
Yeah, and again, this is the ongoing discussion. And quite honestly, I shared with Dave, I'm very nervous about this presentation because it is very messy in terms of trying to make a comparison to the prior year. What will be interesting is when we get the summative grades for the middle school, because all we have is a progress report. So that will be very interesting, as well as 5, 6 letter grades. So those are some data points that we're looking at, but also trying to glean some takeaways that when we get back to in-person after the worldwide pandemic's over, what are some things that we can incorporate in terms of practice, not only digitally, but in person as well as structurally to set our kids up to success.
Well, John, thank you. Thank you for everybody putting this together. Will you have another, a second quarter report that you will share with us?
We can absolutely do that. And Dave and I were talking about that because, to be honest, we traditionally don't hand out the data beforehand. We try and answer a lot of the questions real time, and then we provide the data notebooks, Kate, as you know. That's more of the summative at the end of the year. But what's we're excited about doing is, coming back potentially in a work session or another board presentation with that information. We need to monitor this throughout the year. And the things that, one factor that concerns me the most nationally is that districts on the East Coast have seen some districts on the East Coast have seen a significant drop off in student engagement and student support. And that's where student teacher relationships are key, in terms of maintaining that student engagement and responsiveness in the learning environment and turning work in. And again, that goes hand in hand with outreach to parents as needed to get them involved and support. And that's why we built in those Wednesdays to provide that time for teachers to reflect on who's engaged so far this week and Thursday, Friday last week, and who do I need to touch base with, so anyway, again, we're trying to decipher best practice. So
just one last comment.
Sure.
I really, the high school's enrollment, their enrollment was pretty much steady. They didn't lose as many students. So I think this speaks, I know it's, it's really different trying to compare something to last year. The other thing you might want to think of, and as you go on, and I'm sure you're talking about it, is maybe a 4-day week next year and having a 1 day where you connect with parents and, because I think this Wednesday thing has been, I've heard really positive things, both at the elementary and at the high school, where the teachers have a day where they can connect with the parents and the students that are.
Yes. And, again, we're looking at all things. The challenge there becomes the instructional hours component, because this year, for us asynchronously, the whole district on Wednesday, student needs to log in and turn in an assignment, or the teacher needs to have a phone conversation or a Zoom meeting with a parent, or an IEP meeting with the family. All those allow for attendance to be taken during this year, unique year and scenario statewide. In a normal year, that would not count in terms of attendance. But Kate, you're absolutely right. What are some ways that we can incorporate, best practice moving forward? So the next slide, Q1, high school grade data comparison. And Brad, this is more information that you really wanted to get into. So, and again, this is a very challenging slide. This slide represents last year, semester one. So semester one, for the 2019-20 year in blue, and comparing it to semester or Q1 this fall, this year in red. So what we're looking at is not only these are students that failed up to 25% of their classes. Again, that's challenging. That means 1 or 2 classes and they fit into this group.
But the ratio has changed from last year to this year.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
Yep.
Are the expectations different from last year to this year in the first semester?
So let me answer that real quickly. Teachers have had to pare down and prioritize essential standards because we don't have the instructional minutes. You know, Brad, as you know, if we have, and we talked about a 15-minute bell, break in the middle of the schedule, 5 minutes every day, and we don't meet our instructional minute requirement. Well, Wednesdays, that's not direct instruction time. That's the support day. So, in a normal year, we can't count that as, instruction. So how do you fit a full grade level curriculum into those 4 days of direct instruction? So that's an added complexity, but you're absolutely right. And this is why I didn't want to necessarily, I was not looking forward to this, because we're trying as closely as possible to provide comparison, not only for our board, but
Yeah,
for
this is a tough one, John. This is not it's hard to compare those two from year in and year out.
Yeah. Okay. So I hate to go too far in the weeds, and Dave and I were trying to talk about, can we do 2 minutes a slide? But anyway, the 90 students here, I just wanted to point out the 90 students this first semester, quarter one, 4.8% of the 9 through 12 grade levels, okay? The 90 students who failed 100% all 4 of their classes. Traditionally, some people might say, oh, well, that's probably the special education students or the ELL students or the ever ELL students. So we wanted to just make sure we were very clear in terms of what that 90 students. So out of that 90 students, only 8 are identified special education. That's a huge positive comment for the hard work that our high school special education staff members are doing, their PLCs, et cetera.
Who are they then?
Oh, yeah, I'm getting there. Yeah, I'm getting there. 11 students of the 90 are ELL. 11 more are ELL monitored. So they're no longer receiving supports, but we're monitoring their progress. And 8 separate students are dual identified ELL and SPED. So if you're doing the math on that, 42%, less than half, are our students of those areas of identification. So then it becomes, okay, and that's exactly the discussion that we're having, Brad, in terms of admin teams and counselors. Okay, so who are these kids, these 90 students? Because we can print them out and take a look at them. A lot are economically disadvantaged, which in this era of connectivity, they may or may not have internet. And we've done a great job. Enrique and his staff have done a tremendous job in terms of deployment of one-to-one student devices, but also the little you know what I'm talking about, the little.
But Karen,
yeah,
hey Karen.
Yeah.
So how does this differ from the years that we've done this? Is this the same group of kids, only times 2? Or is this a different group of kids that we're talking about in terms of the other half?
That's a really good question. So we're diving down into exactly who these kids are and talking about, as soon as possible, bringing in just even small groups of kids. What we've been hearing is just, sometimes it's connectivity, but other times it's just confusion around navigating the entire Zoom, Canvas, Cami, all of that. And so, when we reached out to some other principals that have brought in just small groups of kids, like if we focused on these 90 kids and figured out a way to bring in 5 here and 5 there, it's really just supporting them in person for a couple hours. I mean, ODE, that they have a limited of 2 hours a day, right? So it's like, bring them in, dramatic results, right? Dramatic results, just being in person with the kids, helping, just figuring out where they're struggling. The percentages aren't a huge surprise to us, right? We would figure out that our disadvantaged populations would be struggling. but we just got to figure out how to support them. So that's the next conversation. In fact, in Wednesday's leadership, that's exactly what it is. How can we get these kids in? How soon can we get them in? And how can we support them in navigating our new environment?
So these kids would be priorities, and when things open up again, to be first in the door, then I'm assuming.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, sooner versus later, right? I mean, with our metrics, it's going to be a little challenging, but
I'm just looking at graduation rate down the road. These kids are going to have a really hard time getting out the door at the end.
yeah, exactly. The nice thing, like John mentioned earlier about proficiency, the nice thing is that, so in all of our year-long classes, the kids that did fail Q1, a lot of those teachers are still working with those kids to recover those grades, right? So that's a plus in the year-long classes. But again, like with these 90 kids, they probably did not turn in much of anything, right? So that's the piece that we've got to figure out. They're there. Their attendance of that group, their attendance was 67% on average of that 90 kids. And so they're attending, not great attendance, but they're still there. So we've got to figure out what is it that we need to provide support with.
So, and Karen, great segue for me. Thank you. So one other thing.
I got one more comment. We know who these kids are. I mean, we've been around long enough that you know exactly who these kids are. And I'm going to make a comment that, I mean, this is not easy. And it gets harder for this group of kids because they're making choices probably just not to participate at some level. So I'm happy to see that for me, of course, the special ed kids are doing well, and some of the other groups of kids that are doing well. But I think the board, we need to have some discussions about, again, supporting, prioritizing this group of kids that because of what's gone on, they've made bad choices and they need a lot more one-on-one instruction or group instruction. So that's just my comment.
So real quick, back to, attendance. We've always known this. Attendance impacts student achievement and student progress and grades. So when you look at the 100% column at the far right of the 90 students who failed all, Karen said she already shared that 67%. When you take a look at the students that failed 75% of their classes, their average attendance was 75. When you look at 50% attendance, their attendance is 83%. So you can see the correlation in terms of student attendance and what we're finding out, and more engagement. Not only are they there, but are they taking the avid notes? Are they turning in the classroom assignments? That sort of thing. So that is some data points that we're going to continue to watch very closely.
So John, one of the things that I saw the attendance and I thought the attendance for this year was pretty high, really, right? When we were in the 90s, I think, kind of all across all the grade, I think it was all the schools or all the grade levels. And I just wonder if, how do I say this? It doesn't feel accurate when you look at the grades. So do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I know it goes back to how you count attendance and how you would in a normal year. If you're, I can't remember if you're on a 4-period day and they're gone 2 of the periods, they're gone for a half a day. If it's the first one and the last one, they might be gone the whole day, and so, but yet this year, if they log on for any amount of time, they're counted as attending. So I just think that the attendance, I think there's another piece there that we're missing, because when you look at because you just said it, those students that have a high number of failures, F grades, have generally poor attendance. And that's always how it is. And so I don't know, something just doesn't feel right in this. So to me, but.
Right. And again, The elementary is, pretty gracious by the state parameters.
Yeah.
But like the differentiated approach at the high school and middle school that they're using. But you're absolutely right, Mark. It's attendance. And that's why providing early data, information, lack of connectivity to Karen's attendance team. And, Karen, I tried to identify who that is. Would you please go ahead and just give them an idea of who it is and what they do?
Yeah, sure. So Juan Lopez, Dwight Jensen. Dwight Jensen's kind of the lead on our attendance team. Jose Luis, a lot of our classified staff. So Michelle, Joe, who else do we have on there? Michelle Dyke. So a lot of our classified staff, Doug, Francis Fabella. So basically what they do is Dwight and Juan kind of lead it with a lot of the data that's going in. And then any meeting that counselors or administrators have, they put that data in there as well so that we know who's making contact with what families. So we're not doubling up on the work, right? So we're actually putting everything in there. If counselors are having communications with families, and that's taken a little while to work out. If a counselor has scheduled a meeting with a family, it goes into that sheet so that we all have the same information. And Mark, you're right. It's those kids that are showing up as, 100% or 90% attendance, and they're failing. I mean, that's a focus, right? Because they're there, they're trying, they're not, for whatever reason, passing their classes. That we've got to figure out. So there's a whole scope of things that we need to address. I just got done signing probably 1,200 certificates that are going to go out to kids. 553 of those are perfect attendance. And again, the way we do attendance, teachers verify multiple times during the block to make sure that they are attending. 868 were between 90 and 99% attendance. So that's pretty awesome. That's almost over 1,400 kids that have 90% or above attendance. And then we also did honor roll, which is another 500, 600 kids. So pretty cool. It's just a huge team effort and everybody's working really, really hard.
And we're trying to provide that just-in-time support. But Mark, it's absolutely correct. What's key is, having those high standards, teacher by teacher, in terms of accurate marking and accurate engagement. So if a kid is present throughout the period, they're marked as present. If they, like Karen said earlier, if they're not responding halfway through, that teacher converts that to asynchronous. So yes, we met the state regulation for attendance, but we want to send that clear message to the attendance team as well as to the student and parent. Hey, you've got to not only show up for the first 30 minutes, but you also need to participate and turn work in. Now, the work doesn't, contribute to the attendance, but that's a leading indicator in terms of student success, whether or not they are regularly attending. And we all know that. So thank you, Karen. The next slide. This is data that we pulled together. Now, this is first semester. Now, this is where, again, it gets very confusing. 13.2% of all grades issued were Fs, FM, that's an F for the modified diploma students, and NP, no grade, no pass. And this first semester quarter, 17.2% of the grades issued were Fs, FM, MP, which is a 4% increase over the prior year. Again, apples and oranges in terms of the number of classes, but we're trying to just kind of look for ways that we can, compare. And then this is the graph that everybody's saying, the incompletes 14.4% of all grades issues above, but also includes incomplete. So that number, 13.2%, that's an additional 1.2% of students that were assigned at the end of first semester last year and incomplete. That number has grown at, and this can get behind you, Mark. You know this as a former high school principal. Eyes are like snowballs. They kind of grow, unless you take care of them in a relatively quick manner. But 21%, including the Fs and no pass, it also includes 7% increase in eyes over the previous year. So the incomplete means the student is working with the teacher to finish the course due to extenuating circumstances. In some cases, this is happening with Fs as well, again, with our proficiency-based teaching and learning system. It's really helping us this year to help that. So those numbers for sure have been reduced, but to what extent, it would only be a snapshot on a given day, because teachers are turning in, not only in credit recovery, but the teachers themselves are turning in grade slips and converting those I's or those F's to letter grades. In our system, we allow that to do that. But 32% of the total enrollment had at least one F this quarter. So Brad, that's another way of looking at the whole, 1 in 3, that's not good. Anyway, and teachers or staff, again, are working in CDL to reduce those numbers, and those numbers are going to go down.
So it'll be interesting to see where we end up at the end of the semester. So is this snapshot was a month ago, probably?
Yeah, and this was the end of first semester compared to the end of first quarter. 8 classes compared to 4. I know, right? It's just,
yeah.
Whew, welcome to our world.
No, I know what that world looks like. I'm just curious to see where we end up at the end of our semester.
Right, absolutely. So the next slide is just one more way, and Dave and I talked about it. There was 5 more slides following this one. We said, okay, no, by about this time tonight, we'll probably get by with just letting you know this is some data we're looking at. And this is all students, 1920 semester 1 versus semester 1 or Q1. The number of students last year, the 1,959 students compared to this 1,885 students, and how they broke down in terms of the percentage of students receiving up to 25%. Again, that's another challenge, in terms of that's 2, and this is 1 F for most students, because some do have 5, but you can see the percentage. 29% were Caucasian at the end of first semester, and 27% were Caucasian at the end of first quarter. Our Hispanic population was 64.9%, Hispanic population 64.7%. And then we had additional slides that broke it down by grade level, from 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. But again, you get the idea of the data that we're trying to collect to help inform not only supports and day-to-day, week-to-week interventions and outreach to parents and students, but also, how do we tweak instructionally and systemically, our system. So this has been a yeoman's task. Now, looking ahead, these next graphs, Dave is going to introduce. And so
yeah.
Dave.
So I just wanted to kind of, I've got just a couple of more slides for you, but I wanted to make sure that we made kind of a transition here because of, it was a month and a half ago, you asked kind of, well, how are we doing? And so that's why we prepared this information tonight to provide a frank estimation of how things are going. And there's some, and again, none of the data is perfect. It doesn't compare well. We don't have SBAC data from last year. So we've brought this forward to just be kind of blunt in where we're at. And there's some positive things. Again, for me, I actually think the attendance data is, it is what it is. We're in CDL and this is how we're taking attendance. That information is there. And I don't think I'm going to look at it as being inaccurate because it's measuring what we're supposed to be measuring. But it's still, there's lots of challenges here. Again, having a third of our kids with an F is not okay. And that's why these school teams will go back in and begin to look at how do we solve some of those pieces. Again, I'm looking at this graph and I don't think I'm seeing a lot of change in the distribution of which students are getting the Fs. But certainly what we're going through right now is challenging kids and challenging our students. And what we tried to give you tonight was a pretty honest look at what that looks like. And before I kind of I'm not changing gears, but there's some more data that I ask folks to pull, and I want to show that to you. Any other kind of last questions on what we've seen so far, and then I'll get into this next piece.
Yeah, I would have one comment, Dave.
Yep.
I would look at this data and say, what are we doing to improve what we're doing right now in terms of instruction? At some point, you're right, it is what it is. But what are we doing? What are our strategies for improving instruction to make sure that we don't end up with the year with 32 Fs, 32% Fs? I guess from a kind of a diagnostic prescriptive perspective, I mean, those are the things that I would look like. I don't really, the attendance is, the way we calculate attendance, it looks good. But the fact of the matter is that this is where we are. What do we need to do to improve what our numbers look like right now?
Yep, agreed. And we'll come back to you with some of that. Okay, so the last thing that I asked them to pull was, I was trying to get an understanding of where we've been as a district. And I'm trying to get kind of an understanding of how are they improving or are they not improving over time? And so what I asked them to pull was basically, I wanted to know what was the difference in, and this is a state test score. So this first one is the English language arts here. And I wanted to know how is it changing between groups? Now and it starts here in 2004 and it goes to 2018-19. The tests here changed like 3 times. Originally, they were the state achievement tests, and then they became OAKS, and then we transitioned to a second version of OAKS, I want to say, and then it was to the SBAC eventually. So there's multiple tests in here, but what I did is I had them each year compare the performance of the different kind of historically underserved groups in our district. And I wanted to say, well, okay, this first one is our Hispanic students to all the other students. And then it was Hispanic to white. In a single year, they all took the same test. So this comparison works year to year. And here's what I saw when I pulled this data. So each color here is a different year. And what you can see is basically for everyone's good intentions and for all the work, the different pieces that we've done since 2004, the gap maintains. And it maintains it there's some variation here, but the fact of the matter is that the gap is staying there, which speaks to the fact we're going to have to really start to look at our systems as we are moving forward. This is kind of that piece where we've had lots of good work and we've had lots of great intentions by our people and our students, but we still are not on these historically underserved groups. We are not making progress on this. And so this is, as we begin to move forward, we've got to begin to look at these systems. This is what I would call systemic injustice, which is in our kids with poverty. And we see this is our English language arts results here. This is the math. Again, the math test changes over time, but still year to year, we see these gaps maintaining between all of these various groups. And this is, I don't want to do a whole lot of causality here because this is a pretty tenuous comparison. But I think what it shows is the gap is there, and it's been there for upwards of 15 years, and probably before that, but it was 2004 when they first began to break our state results out by demographic groups. It was the first time, so I couldn't go back any further than this. But this is the piece that just points to me that we've got to start looking at our systems and as we start moving into the spring, we start talking budget and we start talking, and we've got some good news here, which is the governor's budget refunds our student investment account. And that student investment account, all of the ideas and systems that we put into place that were around impacting these groups. But I just wanted you to all see that our data here says that we've got a systemic injustice situation and we've got to change our systems. Questions?
Dave, this is Narce. I know that throughout the year, we've talked about several intervention programs, in particular for those that are, our marginalized populations, in particular, our Latinx students. And I mean, is there anything, I know we have a couple of initiatives like the Juntos program and other stuff going on. And I'm still pretty new to the board, but I mean, this has been, I remember hearing this 20 years ago. So it's still happening.
Absolutely, and this data is basically saying that yes, this is still happening. I think the interventions that you're talking about there are excellent interventions. I think we need to look more towards what we're thinking about doing with our multi-tiered systems of support, the MTSS system, where we're beginning to bring kids in and look at them holistically, both their attendance, their behavior, and their academics. And part of SIA was kind of built around this. This is where we were pushing in more counselors. The counselors need to begin to run some of the tier 3 interventions in that MTSS system. We've got a lot of like tier 1 kind of interventions, but we don't have a really good handle on tier 2 and tier 3. I'm going to have Cassie's going to come in, and I think it's the first meeting in February, where she's going to present on the work that we're doing around the behavioral health and wellness framework and MTSS specifically. There's good progress being made on how we're going to, one, find out. I mean, we know who these kids are. I just don't think we have the best interventions yet to solve some of the problems. But that's what we're working on right now, Narce. And as we move forward, I'm hearing that they're going to be funding the student investment account at or at more than the level that was predicted this year. Originally, I think it was $4.6 million is what they had. We're going to invest, and we ended up only getting a portion of that. But I think coming in next year, they're planning on pushing in the whole amount of money. So we're going to need to take a look and see what we're doing and make sure that we can begin to make an impact on this.
So just one more thought.
Yeah.
And just an observation, based on the previous PowerPoint. I know that I think I can't remember who mentioned it, but that we have several stakeholders within the high school, for example, that are classified positions to be able to do some of this work, right? So I'm going to kind of park that there for a minute. And then I also wonder, and this is not pointing fingers at anybody, I'm just speaking broadly, is do we have the, do we have principals or people that are accountable for the specific schools that actually have the tools and the professional development opportunity to be able to help us change the dial with all of this stuff? Is that possibly needed? Maybe we're focusing in the wrong direction and we need to be looking and hiring people that come ready and equipped to be able to move us in the right direction. That's just overall arching. And two, going back to the classified, maybe that's the challenge, that we keep hiring classified staff versus actually, and I'm not saying they're not qualified. I'm sure that they are qualified and probably homegrown, but why a classified and not a director or someone that actually knows how to move this work forward?
So again, I think we have lots of folks who, I mean, inside of the organization, I think the ideas that we laid out in our student investment account and the interventions that we're thinking about, the investment in ELL teachers that we made this year with I think the right moves are there. What I'm trying to lay out here is that we really got to look deeply at our system. I don't think there's an idea that we're not, I don't think that there's some kind of new way of doing things out there that are necessarily going to solve all these problems. It's about us aligning and figuring out who the kids are that aren't doing well, and then getting them the interventions that they need so that we can bring them up to speed. I think it has more to do with the ideas we've already laid out in that student investment account, but haven't been able to completely implement yet. And some of it is classified, but there's a big portion of this that is certified. And so I'm headed to the end here. Just any last questions?
I don't have any questions, Dave. I would say that there was a lot there, and you know, it was you know, it's hard to look at it because it is apples and oranges. It's, you know, quarter versus semester, so it's really tough to you know, look at that and try and you know, kind of come to conclusions on the spot, so to speak. I guess the one that stuck with me was the 31%, I think, at the high school. That, you know, that's a solid number that's just there, right? And so that's a concern, and Brad spoke to it, and John alluded to it as well. You know, just down the road, if you can't recover that credit, then it becomes you know, it becomes difficult for high school students to move forward. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I would also say that, again, I think the hiring that we did tonight of our ELL migrant and providing an administrator to begin to lead, Leonard Venerable, who has been our leader, and that has done a great job. But it really needs, I think that's partly what Narce was pointing towards, is that it needs power and leadership at a district level. And Leonard's done a great job, but it needs a position, and I'm excited to we're again to hire that in and get that moving.
Okay. No other questions. We'll move on. We've got a few action items here. Thanks, Dave and John. And
Thank you. And I'm emailing the board right now the copy of the presentation.
Okay. Thanks, John.
So Mark, I do have the letter for the public appearance whenever you're ready for that.
Okay, should we read it after we do the action items?
Sounds great.
Okay. All right, so for the evening here, we have a number of action items. The first one is item number 1, City of Cornelius Multiple Code Amendment, Chapter 3.35.030. And this is Eileen, I think, is presenting this one.
Thank you, Mark. To frame this a little bit, the City of Cornelius has approached us and is requesting the Forest Grove School Board to authorize an amendment to their municipal code that relates to tax exemptions for affordable housing. This amendment would remove the criteria that currently limits the tax exemption to residents that are 55 and older. Then once this is done, it would then align it with the current ORS statutes. The City of Cornelius is required to receive a majority of their local taxing districts approval in order to pass this change. The revision to remove the 55 and older requirement would allow low-income housing developers in the community to serve the community at large. Currently, there's one developer that's approached the City of Cornelius that's interested in this exemption. That development would create a 113-unit affordable housing development, and it has been designed to meet all of the 2018 Metro Regional Affordable Housing Bond criteria. which would then be a considerable portion of the project's funding. Due to the way that the Oregon school funding formula works and the equalization formula works, the loss in revenue from the local property taxes would be distributed across all school districts in the state. And so we're about 1% of that. And that is what the impact for the district is what we would see. Ryan Wells with the City of Cornelius is here tonight to answer any questions that you guys have about this proposed amendment.
Thank you, Eileen. Does anyone have questions for Ryan?
How does this amendment, I mean, I heard what you just said, Eileen, but are there any other implications or future implications for this? Just trying to understand here.
For the district, it allows community housing for our low-income families. It will bring in more students and it'll impact our facilities and our enrollment. So that is one thing to consider, but it also provides an opportunity for those in our community to be able to have affordable housing. So it's, it's a catch-22, but it does have long-term enrollment capacity impact for us.
And do we know where these developments are going to be and what implications it'll have for some of the conversations we've had in the past board meetings in regards to building new schools?
This particular development would be in the Cornelius boundary. And so it would impact the Cornelius enrollment capacity and the projections. So we'll have to include that in the update for the long range facilities plan.
Okay. So what's the plus and minus for seniors?
Ryan, perhaps Ryan could answer.
Yeah, hello, good evening, everyone. Ryan Wells, Community Development Director for the City of Cornelius. I'm going to step back just a little bit and give you just a really quick history on why we're even here tonight. Back in 2015, the City of Cornelius City Council adopted the language that established a property tax exemption for affordable housing projects. But there was really only one project on the horizon at the time, and that was the Cornelius Place project, which resulted in our new library, which includes 45 units of affordable senior housing on the second and third floors. In order to kind of constrain the property tax hit that the city would ultimately take, it was recommended and adopted in its current form, which included an additional criterion, which isn't in the Oregon revised statutes, but was independently placed by the city council to have that 55 and over criterion. So only affordable housing projects that house residents at 55 and over are currently eligible for that property tax exemption. So what this will do, this would remove that extra eligibility criterion and align our language in the municipal code with the language in the Oregon revised statutes. So I would say plus and minus for seniors, there isn't really one explicitly, because senior affordable housing projects would still be eligible just as they are now, but it opens the door up to a wider variety of affordable housing project types, such as we're seeing around the region. As Eileen pointed out, this is a 113 unit project. Because of the demographics in our community, it has a larger proportion of multi-bedroom units to accommodate larger households. It also has transitional housing accommodation and supportive mental health housing within the development. So there's a wide variety of services that will be provided. So there's a little bit more context as to what's leading us to proposing this in the first place.
So Ryan, is the City of Cornelius also, I guess, taking a tax hit on this as well? Is that the right term to use here?
Yeah, and we don't get to share it with all the other cities in the state. So
okay.
we would independently be taking that hit.
Yeah.
And a little bit of a quick clarification for what Eileen mentioned. Our city council is scheduled to consider this language on our January 4th city council meeting. It's already on the agenda. If the city council approves it, great. We would, apply that exemption to the city's portion of the property tax exemption of the property tax. If over 51% of the taxable jurisdictions, as far as the taxable assessed value goes, approve this policy, then it is a fully tax exempt project.
Okay.
If less than 51% say that the city adopts it, but none of the other taxing jurisdictions support it, then the city alone would be the only entity that exempts the property tax, and it doesn't really have that same level of benefit for the nonprofit affordable housing developer.
Right. Okay. For the developer to have the sort of the initiative to want to do it then.
Exactly.
Ryan, who is the developer?
This project is being developed by Reach in partnership with Bienestar, which is they're both very well established nonprofit affordable housing developers and operators.
Okay.
So Bienestar would operate the facility once it's built.
And Eileen, what's the plus and minus to the school district in terms of budget?
Let's lose a little bit, I think.
For us, it's really because it's not property taxes we're receiving right now, since there's no development there. So it's not a loss, it's a loss in future potential revenue. The plus is we have supports for our community and our families. The offset is we have to ensure we have enough facilities to support the increased enrollment.
So classrooms in our schools to support the numbers that will be coming in. And
Right.
where is this development located?
Over by Fred Meyer.
So what boundary, that would be Cornelius?
Mhm.
So I have a question, Ryan, sort of to piggyback on, I think what Brad might have asked. I'm sorry, Brad, I interrupted. I'll stop. Maybe you weren't done.
I'm good, Narcy, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to ask the question about if there has been any collaboration with some of the nonprofits within the county, and I'm glad to hear that Bienestar is one of them. I'm going to assume probably Centro Cultural and Adelante Mujeres might have had input as well, which a lot of our children in our Forest Grove School District are touched by those nonprofits in some sort of way. So, and Bienestar does an outstanding job. Has there been data? I mean, I'm sure Bienestar has provided some data on where the need is in particular. Is there a preliminary of the impact that it would have on the, I know you said it's 55 plus, right? The housing is for 55 plus, which means, I mean, do we have any data in about how many children or K through 12 might be?
I'll make a clarification, not say, so this project that they're proposing is not a senior housing project. That's the whole impetus for this change. This is a family project. There are a number of 2 and 3 bedroom units in this project.
Okay.
So we're going away from the sole focus on the 55 and older. I'll also clarify that we haven't received a formal land use application from Reach on the development itself. They've partitioned 4 acres off of a larger parcel up to this point. We're expecting that to record this year. And then early next year, they're going to initiate the formal land use going to the planning commission type of process. And so throughout all of calendar year 2021, we're going to go through the land use, building permitting, and construction process.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So it's family. So having lived in Cornelius for many years myself, and having housing like this limited in Cornelius, and I'm new to this. So are there any opportunities with the Forest Grove School District in this development to be able to assure that the facilities actually provide some potential space for our children's wellness, such as playgrounds, quality playgrounds, after-school activities where we might be able to partner with them, like we currently do with Bienestar. At least we did at Portland Community College where I used to work, with doing tutoring, so forth and so on. So Dave, I'm thinking about if we were to get the talent search project, that's the type of space that they need for after school or before school. So anyway, just throwing out idea.
There will be an opportunity. Once we receive an application for the land use process, we do send that out to all of the agencies that have any kind of jurisdiction or might want to give input. So Forest Grove School District would receive a formal land use notice, at which time they'd be able to provide formal written or in-person input to the Planning Commission prior to their consideration. So certainly an opportunity there. I think there'll also be some opportunity for informal consultation with Bienestad and REACH, knowing that this is going to be an important facility for families who might need a little bit of extra help. I think that they would be very receptive to engagement with the school district.
Thank you.
And Ryan,
I have a question, Ryan. In this project, is a certain percentage for seniors, a certain percentage for families? Is it broken down like 25% for seniors? I just know that there's just such a shortage of affordable housing, and as I see the baby boomers moving to retirement, 50% of them just have Social Security. So I'm just wondering how they're proportioning out the allocation of units.
So I'm not aware of any defined proportion for seniors. Maybe they've done something like that internally, but again, not having received a formal land use application on this project, I don't have that information. I know that, again, they have a higher proportion of multi-bedroom units on this one. And I'll say that a couple of points I just want to make sure I get in here. One, whether this project is affordable or a market project on this land, if there were a market rate project on this land, it would still impact the school district. There would still be multifamily units on the property, and whether they're affordable or not, that's really neither here nor there. So, and then also this opens the door for future projects as well. So even if this project doesn't have a focus on accommodating seniors in need of regulated affordable housing, like our previous 45-unit Cornelius Place project did last year, there's still other opportunities proportionate to the size and capacity of Cornelius, of course, to offer additional projects, which wouldn't be hindered by any obstacles in our municipal code to allow those projects to be tax exempt.
And last question, Ryan, when do you project that these buildings, if they go ahead with the proposal, be finished in 4 years, 3 years?
Their tentative schedule that they shared with me just last week showed the whole permitting process and design process coming through next year. And so I would expect construction to probably begin late next year or early 2022, probably about a year, year plus of construction. So 2 to 2.5 years, 2 to 3 years, maybe, by the time we see that project up and running.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, hi Ryan, I have a question. This is Valerie Ingram. I was wondering, why is this coming to us right now? If you haven't had an application for a land permit, if it hasn't been approved by the city council, why are we seeing this right now?
Sure, that's a perfectly acceptable question, because I know the project is coming, and that's essentially why. The REACH has gone through an administrative permit with us for a land partition. So they basically broke off 4 acres out of 11 acres that were owned by the original property owner, and so they are cutting that off so they could buy that 4 acres for this project. They've received their requested Metro bond funding that was announced a couple months ago through the Washington County Housing Authority. So all the pieces are in place for this project. It's really just a matter of going through the steps. And the design review isn't necessarily a black or white, you can do the project or not. It oftentimes is, yes, you can do the project, but you need to craft it and form it these certain ways and incorporate these certain elements and take out these certain elements because they conflict with our code. So I would say that it's essentially a sure thing that there is going to be an regulated affordable housing project on this 4 acres of property. What it ultimately looks like is still to be determined. Does that answer your question, Valerie?
Yeah, kind of. I guess I'm just confused on, so this is the next step, is coming to school districts and asking us to approve this. There isn't
Yes.
something, like, we're not getting ahead of ourselves by doing
Absolutely
this right now.
not. As a matter of fact, I was at the Hillsborough School District last week with this same pitch. Even though this project specifically is in the Forest Grove School District, I wanted to make sure that we had a blanket kind of support for any and all future project that might come down the line. And also, if you take a look at the ORS 307 and change that's cited in the letter, there is a provision that if it's a nonprofit that's holding property for a future project, that also is eligible for an exemption. So even if something happened, bond monies fell through, and they bought the property and they needed to wait 2 or 3 years before they could implement the project, we'd still want to be able to support that effort through the tax exemption just for the land holding piece, which at this point they are more or less eligible for.
Okay, thanks.
One more question. What if we don't approve it?
If you don't approve it, then the city will still consider it as an independent action by the city council. And as I mentioned earlier, the combined tax proportion of between the city of Cornelius and the Forest Grove School District is about 71% of the total taxable value of the property in question. So simply approval by the Forest Grove School District and the city of Cornelius renders it fully exempt as a project because we're surpassing that 51% threshold. If the Forest Grove School District doesn't approve it, the city would likely still consider it, and should they adopt it by the city council in January, then just the city's portion of the property tax would be exempt. And what implication that has on the nonprofit agency's bottom line, they would have to make a determination there.
Okay, any other questions for Ryan? Okay. Is there a motion? Somebody want to offer a motion?
Hey, Mark, do you want to read the title of it, and then I can say so moved?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I'll read the title.
Well, just because I don't have my agenda
Yeah.
out or anything right now.
So
Thanks.
it's the City of Cornelius Municipal Code Amendment, Chapter 3.35.030. So, yeah.
Okay, so moved.
Okay.
Second, Narce.
Okay. All right. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll call for the vote. So, let's see. Kate Grandusky,
Yes.
Brad Bafero,
Yes.
Marcy Rodriguez,
Yes.
Valerie Ingram,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. So that motion passes. And thank you, Eileen and Wyatt, for answering our questions.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Okay, our next action item is policy ACB, all students belong, ACB-AR, bias incident complaint procedure. I think, yeah, second reading, and this is Mr. Parker.
Perfect. You have this policy and the administrative rule in front of you. To remind everybody, this policy would make the display of hate symbols on our campuses prohibited. And in particular, it calls out the new swastika and the Confederate flag as being prohibited in any or all of our school properties. This isn't new ground for us because we already had a policy, but what is new ground and of particular significance is the AR here. And that puts on paper a procedure for someone in our community and schools to make a complaint surrounding bias or discrimination. I think that's of note. I wholeheartedly support this, and I'm happy that this is before you. So with that, we haven't got any comments since the last reading, but I would take any questions that folks have about the policy or the AR.
No questions or comments. Okay. All right. I'll move that we adopt policy ACB. All students belong ACB AR bias incident complaint procedure.
Second it.
Okay. We'll call for or any discussion before we call for the vote. Okay. Hearing none. So I am a yes. Valerie Ingram.
Yes.
Kate Granduski.
Yes.
Narce Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Narce. And Brad DeFaro.
And I'm a yes.
Okay. So that motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Our next action item is related to the Oregon School Boards Association. This is an application for a Oregon School Board Association position, and this is for position 15. There was one candidate, Leanne Larson from the Beaverton School District. Her information is in the packet, and I think it was presented in the packet last time. She is the only candidate for the position, and I have worked with Leanne, being on the LPC committee, and a strong candidate. So I would just say that. I would move that we vote for cast our ballot for Leanne Larson for position 15.
I second it, and I agree with you, Mark. She's a really hard worker for the
Yes.
Oregon School Board Association.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? So
Yeah, I agree. She's great.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Val. Okay, I'll call for the vote. Valerie Ingram?
Yes.
I am a yes. Brad DeFaro?
I'm a yes.
Kate Granduski?
Yes.
And Narce Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, that moves. And the next one is this is another Oregon School Board Association item. It's the legislative policies priorities and principles for 2021 and 2022. We did have these in our packet at our last meeting, and they were in this packet as well. There is that information has been there for your review. It is, I don't know, Dave, maybe you can, or do I read the resolution before we, I don't, do you know? Okay.
You don't
I don't
have
think
to,
you-
Mark. You
yeah.
can if you want to, but it's in the packet.
Yeah, it's in the packet. That's what
Let's
I thought.
skip the resolution, Mark.
Okay. What's that, Brad?
Let's skip the resolution.
Yeah, okay, all right, I agree. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the priorities and principles?
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
And second.
Seconded, okay. So discussion, no discussion. All right, Brad DeFaro?
Ooh.
Brad, did you vote?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't. Narce?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Val?
Yes. Brad, you're too quick with the mute button.
And I'm a yes as well, so that motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Let's see, we're now down to item number 5. This is the revised 2021-2022 budget development calendar, and this is Eileen.
Thank you, Mark. Tonight we have a proposed budget development calendar amendment. part of it, there's two changes on it. One is to extend the budget committee interview of applicants to January 4th through the 8th, and then appoint the budget committee members on January 11th. This fall, we did open up the budget committee positions. There were 3 positions and 1 alternative position open. We did only receive 3 applications, and in board leadership, it was discussed to continue to leave that open until early January, and then see if we can get additional applications. So tonight we are requesting approval of the adjusted budget development calendar.
Any questions for Eileen? Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
Can I make a motion to approve the adjusted calendar?
Yep, and I'll second it. Any discussion? No discussion, I don't think. Okay. The vote, we'll call for the vote then. I'm a yes. Brad?
Yes.
Narce?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
And Val?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. And item 6, this is a budget appropriation resolution number 20-21R .02. And this is Eileen.
Thank you. Tonight we have a budget appropriation resolution for you. What it is the district was awarded a grant within the Washington County for a community-wide learning support and childcare. This is helping support families in our community to provide childcare this fall. It reimburses childcare services for those that are going to a approved childcare for any childcare costs or up to a certain dollar amount of childcare costs from September all the way through December. So we were awarded about $478,000 to be able to redistribute out to the community. A result of that is we don't have appropriation in our budget to be able to expend this amount of money out of our grant funds and community enterprise function. The resolution increases the appropriation level by the grant.
Okay, Eileen, so this is accepting the funds and actually formally agreeing that we will spend we're accepting them and we're going to budget and spend them, correct?
Kind of. We've already accepted the funds and we've signed the grant agreement. This is the board approving that we can spend the funds.
Spend the funds. Okay. Yes. All right. Got it. Okay. Okay. Any questions for Eileen? Other questions? Okay. Thanks, Eileen. Is there a motion to approve this item?
I move we approve the allocation of the funds that Eileen just described.
Okay. I'll second it.
Second.
Okay. All right. Discussion? No discussion. We'll call for the vote. I'm a yes. Brad?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Narce?
Yes.
And Kate?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. And I think that's all the action items. Dave, might be a good time for you to read the letter?
Yeah, and so again, I'll follow up with Charlotte tomorrow because there's some confusion here about this. So I will call and check in. Here's the letter that was sent to John and I, and then one of the instructional coaches. It was great to meet you on Zoom last spring. Again, I want to say that I can tell you all care about students, and I'm delighted to know that FGSD is willing to recognize that things could be better in our district. Recognizing a problem is the first step in solving that problem. I understand you're all busy, but there's a serious problem happening at NAMS that needs to be addressed now. The thing I wrote you about last spring is happening again. It's happening every year for the past 10 years that I've been working in Forest Grove as a tutor. In math, many students are slipping through the cracks again. This is not because of COVID. This is an ongoing issue for 10 years. The problem becomes more and more glaring as students advance from grade to grade. In NAMS, it often hits a critical level. Students become totally lost and left behind. This year, there's a bright spot. NAMS math teachers are doing a great job allowing students to work at their own readiness level on the ALEX system. However, the teachers are still not taking student readiness into account when they send home regular work via My HMH. Many students who are already at risk for failing and dropping out are receiving My HMH assignments that are, no exaggeration, several years ahead of their current ability. Many NAM students who are years behind grade level in math do not have enough support and do not have accommodations or modifications. This is an extraordinary, frustrating experience for them. Related issue is that there are students who are capable of much higher level thinking who are being given work that's too easy. This is not as devastating, but it's unfortunate. I write to you today mainly out of concern for the students who are being given assignments that are totally frustrating. When can we talk by phone or Zoom to make a plan to intervene so this year we do not see a repeat of past years where so many students hit the walls? I want to help break the cycle of kids getting further and further underwater in math at Porch Grove School District instead of making good progress at their own level. There are many practices I can share with the district that will help solve this problem. The main thing is we need ongoing assessments to inform instruction. If this happens, students can learn in their proximal zone of development. For example, if a student has not demonstrated the ability to convert a fraction to different denominators, then the student's not ready to tackle adding and subtracting fractions with different denominators, and certainly not ready to tackle proportions, percent range, rate of change, slope, and adding and subtracting algebraic expressions that feature the fractions that unlike denominators. Does this make sense? Please help think of the mental health of our students. Some kids have already given up. Many give up in the 9th grade. You can see the statistics. We'll work together. Let's work together to fix this now. Thanks for you considering this request, and thank you for all you do for our students. So I'll follow up with Charlotte tomorrow, and we'll talk more about that. But that was the original email that you wanted to get to the board.
Okay, thanks very much, Dave.
I just apologize again. There was a little mix up there, but I apologize. It kind of happened in that order.
Yeah. Thank you.
And so do I.
Okay. Thank you, you guys. Well, we saw some math information tonight in the achievement data, right? So it is and I haven't been a high school principal. I can say that math is a challenging content area across the state, at all schools really. Okay, let's see. So last couple of items here. So future board items or board discussion. I don't know if anybody has anything to throw out this evening for future items. I don't have any. Also in the packet is an enrollment report. The December 1st, 2020 enrollment report is in your packet. And the monthly financial report is also in the packet. So that information is there. And if there are no other comments, I would just say thank you to the Forest Grove School District staff for just a real challenging start to this school year that is gonna, there's gonna be a break here, the holiday break coming up, and I think it's well deserved for everybody. Folks are working very, very hard to do the best that they can for students in the district, and I think we all just appreciate that very much. So I hope everybody in the district enjoys a nice break.
Mark?
Yes.
I want to echo that. I know it's been really hard, to do the work, and then on top of that, also layer COVID. I also just want to take a moment to thank the public comments as well. I really appreciate the advocacy of our community, sharing what their concerns are, and to bringing all those to our attention.
Great. Okay, with that, I think we will adjourn the meeting at 8:12 p.m. So thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the week and a great break. Thanks.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.